Hey, everybody, and welcome back to episode 16 of The Overlay, a poker podcast brought to you by CCG Poker TV. Super excited to be back. It's middle of June. Summer's here, which should mean that the WSOP is here. Right, Brandon?
We should be cranking through events like 28 through 35 this week, or in the middle of it, right in the middle of it. But
WSOP should be running. The CSOP should be running. It's June of 2020, which means we are still in the middle of COVID-19. I'm not quite sure when that'll ever happen. Maybe on my 45th birthday, which is about 5 years from now, 4 years from now. Nope, 5 years from now.
Yeah, it's over 5 years from now. Yeah,
over 5 years from now. Hopefully, I can stop saying that during this podcast. Is what my over and under bet is. So pound the under, everybody. Hey, welcome, Brandon. How you doing?
Doing all right. The weather's great.
Weather is great. We have definitely touched on the weather in this episode, which is good.
Yeah. Everything else is going the same.
Now,
over here in Indiana, we're like fully open, but
fully open. And I was going to say, in poker-related news, the Horseshoe in Hammond, Indiana, just opened up in yesterday.
Monday the 15th.
Yeah,
yep.
Yesterday the 15th. We're recording this on Tuesday the 16th. And you sent me a picture from WGN. They literally had a line of people outside the door or in their cars waiting to park at the Horseshoe. At 5:30 in the morning when it opened. Now, did it open at 6 or 5:30?
It opened at 6.
Oh, my gosh. People were in line to get into the casino. Now, are they doing table games over there?
Yeah, there's some table games.
Blackjack.
No Pai Gow, but just like blackjack, craps, and roulette.
Right. None of the card games.
No.
Which is all right.
It's like 6 people for the dice and 3 people for roulette and 2 people for blackjack. But, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, it is
but
what it is.
If you know where the Horseshoe is, it was like, you know, that big ramp that goes over to the marina and then you go down into the Horseshoe?
Right.
The cars were backed up.
All the way through the ramp.
Up that slope of the ramp.
That's insane.
So I don't know if it was slow because they are making you do like a questionnaire and take your temperature and wash your hands before you go in. So maybe it was just like a slow process.
And again, it's the first time they're doing it, so they're probably getting used to doing all of those things.
Yep. And now I do have a buddy, well, not really a buddy. I went to like grade school with him, but his dad and my dad are friends, and they went out to breakfast the other day. And he works, he's like a table dealer, and they had training last week. Every time the table closes, the dealer has to hand wash and dry all the chips.
Well, today's the first time that I've gone shopping, right? We needed some stuff for the truck. So I had to go over to Target because that's obviously the easiest place to go, and I know it's open. So I bust out my mask. I go over there, get the bins that we need to kind of get the new chips all acclimated, ready to go for hopefully next weekend. And what should we call it? So, you know, I'm wearing a mask. She's wearing a mask. There's like a new like divider for all of the Target checkout lines, right? She's kind of behind a divider. And then I get done, and there's a woman behind me. Now, she's like 12 feet behind me, which was nice, you know. Personal space now, I'm very happy with the 6 feet. I enjoy my personal space. So that's one bonus from COVID-19 that I'm pretty happy about is the, you know, the space barriers. But she legit, like, as soon as I get done paid, I was like, all right, well, have a great day, you know, see ya. And she immediately like rips out like a wipe and wipes everything down. And I was like, damn, in between each and every customer they do that. It's bananas.
Yeah. I haven't gone shopping, but I've heard things.
Pretty incredible. Well, let's hop right into the episode since we're about 4 minutes in. We haven't talked about anything yet. Today's episode 16, is going to be in lieu of the WSOP and then the CSOP, Chicago Series of Poker. No affiliation between those two, by the way, folks. We are going to be talking about mixed games. We love mixed games, don't we, Brandon?
Mixed games are fun.
Mixed games are fun. I think
mixed games are fun because I'm bad at them. So I think a lot of people are bad at them, which makes them more fun because you really have no idea what's going on, but you want to know, and you try and use your poker skills from other games to like apply. And it's just like fun. You're just driving around, you really have no idea what's happening, and they just
metaphorically driving around.
Right.
Well, I think it's the fact that, you know, and again, I'm going with like the poker norm here, or like the new poker term. Hold'em is broken, right? Everybody knows the game. It's a broken game, right?
I think it's the correct word is like solved.
Solved. Thank you. Not broken. Solved. Hold'em is a solved game. That's why PLO is kind of on the uprise, because people feel like they have a better edge if you really know the game well. You have a more, a bigger advantage over players who are not as knowledgeable about PLO. Take that into the mixed games realm, and I would say 90% of people who play mixed games, 90% of the people who are going to play in a mixed game tournament, they are not going to be proficient in all of the games by any way, shape, or form. Correct?
Correct.
So it's a nice way to get, like, if you are good at those games or you're proficient at those games, you know the rules, you know the strategies, you can actually get a pretty big advantage on your competitors, being that they don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yep. And it's the same thing for like in the dealer's choice at the WSOP. I saw some like pros talking about strategies, and they're like, well, like Badugi is my like 12th best game out of these 20 games that I have to choose from. But I'm the best Badugi player at the table, because nobody else knows. So even you can pick your 12th best game and be better than everybody else at it, and it still be the correct game to call when it's your turn to call a game for dealer's choice.
Because when we talk about so when we talk about mixed games, we're talking about really it all stems from horse, right, which is an acronym. And then even when you go to the 8-game mix, they add some more games into it on top of the horse games. And then 10-game mix is even more games on top of it. And then you can even add in some other goofy games. And Brandon was looking up some stuff that we're going to get into that's really fun. But let's just start with horse. Can you tell us what horse is, what games are involved? And let's just kind of rock it out from there.
We got Limit Holdem is the H. We got Limit Omaha is the O. We got RAZZ, Stud, and Stud 8, which are all obviously limit. Right. So all limit games, fixed limit.
So mixed games in general are typically, not always, but typically the predominant games are always limit poker.
Right.
So limit poker is where there's limits set like 5, 10, which would mean the small blind is what, $2? Big blind would be 5. And you can bet in $5 increments up to 4 times the bet, right? You can raise 4 times.
I think it's 4 bets.
4 bets.
A bet and 3 raises.
A bet and 3 raises. And then on the flop, same thing. It's still the $5 increments. And then once we hit the turn, then it goes up to $10 bets. And then the river is going to be $10 bets as well. So if you're playing 5-10 limit, that's what the limits mean.
Right. It's small bet. It's a small bet, which is $5 pre-flop and on the flop. And it's a big bet on the turn and on the river.
Right.
And then if you get to games that don't have community cards, like Stud and anything that's like a 7-card variant, or 2 down, 1 up, and then 1 up, 1 up, 1 up, 1 down, it's pre-flop, 4th street, and then 5th street, 6th street, and 7th street are all the big bets.
All right, so that helps a little bit with the limit, because I think limit poker, being that limit was the only game that was played up until like the 2000s. I mean, I know that early no limit, but the most popular games back in the day, it's hard to say 2000 was back in the day, but it really is. It's 20 years ago.
For poker especially.
Yeah, 20 years ago, people were playing limit poker. You were playing 5-10 limit, 10-20 limit, 25-50, 50-100 were the big games. That's what people were playing. They weren't playing no limit. I mean, in fact, even when Rounders came out, like in 98, 90, 97, somewhere in there, late 90s, they were still talking about, they were playing more mixed games than they were really playing no limit. Even though they talked about no limit being the Cadillac of poker and all of those things, a lot of the games that they were playing were mixed games.
Yeah, that's why I think the Poker Players Championship, which like I think it's a 50K buy-in these days, is like the Players Championship. That's a mixed game event, and like that holds just as much prestige as the main event does these days, especially since the main event is such a crapshoot these days because of the huge fields that like they almost, the big time pros that are old school, the Barry Greensteins and Alan Cunninghams and Helmuths and Ivies and Negreanu's, they all take that 50K Players Championship. It's almost like their main event these days because they get to showcase.
It's the pros' main event, right? Because
it's the pros' main event. That's a good way.
Really, I hate to say this, but the $10,000 no limit, the main event at the World Series, is basically a $20 early bird version of a very expensive buy-in.
Yeah.
Correct? I mean, it's the same kind of mentality. You get a lot of people, a lot of guys just go out just to say they played it, and, it is what it is. And again, it's just, it never fails. You get
so many local pros, too. Like, every pro from Chicago is playing it. Every pro from Florida is playing it. Every pro from Europe is playing it. Like, the field is just full of, like, these, like, kind of like local pros that all like the real big name guys kind of just get mixed in, where you get the Players Championship of 50K. It's like, well, all of a sudden,
the barrier to entry is a lot higher. The games are more difficult. Yeah, I mean, it's a much more poker players tournament versus no limit. All right, well, let's get into horse. Limit Holdem is just 2 cards. You get limit 2 of them, and it's just like no limit, except you have to play in the limit realm. Limit Omaha, which I find to be very fun. Same deal. Now, is the O in horse, is that 08? It's a high-low version?
It is.
Right. So that means it's a split pot game. So that means if there are 3 cards under 8 on the board, then there is a low hand possible. If there are no cards, if there are only 2 cards under 8, then there's no low possible, and you'd be playing just the high version. No split pot at that point, correct?
Correct. So I think in all of the split pot games, there's a possibility for there not to be a low.
Right. If you don't have 5
all the
cards.
Ones with community cards. Actually, all of them in general.
You got to have 5 cards under 8 in order to qualify for the low.
8 or lower. Yeah.
Right.
And then, so if the board is ace, king, queen, jack, deuce, there's only an ace and a deuce that are below. So it's just the high hand's going to scoop the whole pot. But if it's 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, now you have the 2, the 3, and the 7 on the board, which creates all the low possibilities, which now ace 4 is the nut low, which is just as good as the nut high for half the pot. And so it's really kind of, it's a completely different.
It is, because I find a lot of players in the split pot games, in the high low games, is that a lot of people will just have an ace deuce or an ace 3, and they will just pound the pot the whole way through with no real high hand. They're just playing for half the pot, which is troublesome. If there's only 2 players in the hand, then you're really just splitting your money up. You're not really winning anything.
Or getting quartered.
Or worse, you're getting quartered. And quartered means that we tie on the low, and then somebody wins the high hand, or vice versa. Somebody wins the low and 2 guys tie for the high, but the tie for the high is a little bit tougher, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, that's going to have to be like the same upper straight or something like that.
The nut straight versus, and then that's when you end up getting quartered, which means you only get 25% of the pot, and the other player in the hand is going to win 75% of the pot, which is no bueno.
Correct. That is, I mean, that's okay if there's 5 or 6 ways, but I mean, like you said, especially when it's heads up and you only have half the pot locked up, you're basically getting yourself 3-year-old. You're either going to get your money back or you're going to lose 25% of your money.
Right, which is tough.
Yes.
Those are bad odds to get into.
Those are bad. You either break even or you lose. Those are the kind of things you want to stay away from.
And even with 3 guys in the hand, sometimes you get 2 guys split the low and then the other guy wins the high. And at that point, you're kind of getting quartered without, well, I mean, I guess, you're still getting quartered then, right?
You're still getting quartered.
Right, because I get 25%, you get 25%, the other player who wins the high hand in the 3-way pot, he's going to win half. So he's going to win money from both of us, and the other 2 guys are just losing on that hand. They get a rebate, but it's definitely a losing proposition.
Yep. So that's unless there's a bunch of dead money in there, but you most likely, if there's 3 people in the pot, you're putting more than 25% of the money in. And then you're only getting 25% back. So it's usually a loser.
And 08 is typically how people denote Omaha high-low. I find a lot of people just say 08 versus Omaha high-low. Correct?
Yeah, 08 and stud 8 are used the bigger terms now than Omaha high-low and Omaha
stud high-low.
Stud high-low. Even though they're the same thing. It just means 8 or better for the low end.
And stud is always 7-card stud then, correct? Typically. Yes. That's the interchangeable word. Is that what we're actually saying is, stud 8 is really 7-card stud high-low, abbreviated as stud 8.
Yep.
Which can be confusing, because that's where it gets rough for me, is when people are like, oh, we're going to play stud 8, 08, this, that, and whatever. And I'm like, what are all those games? Which gets tough.
So H and the O are community card flop games, which is, 2 or 4 cards in your hand, 5 cards on the board, burn a flop, burn turn, burn river. We all know that. Round of betting after each one. And then the limits obviously double on the turn and on the river. I think one thing that confuses people is that when they say 5-10 are the limits, like those aren't the blinds.
Right.
Like the blinds aren't 5-10. The blinds are 2-5.
Right.
Like the big blind is equal to the small bet.
Correct.
Which is kind of confusing. But anyways, so then we have the R and the S and the E. That turns to a completely different stud variety of games, which is a different format. There's no blinds. The button doesn't move. it's kind of bringing it back to the 70s and 80s, and
when everybody played stud.
When you think about like people that learned poker in the war, or like your grandpa's teaching you how to play poker.
That's what I learned to play.
Right. When we have family Christmas and we play quarter max bet, I've been trying to make it 50 cent max bet since I was 10 years old. Literally since I was 10, I've been trying to make it 50 cents max. But quarter max bet, the majority of the games we play are stud varieties. Which, I don't know, you want to describe what stud games are?
Well, I wanted to go over horse just to get that one locked in. So you got
Limit Holdem. R, S, and E. Oh, yeah, so R.
The R, S, and E is all 7-card stud games, and the R is RAZZ, which means you just play the low version. Yes?
RAZZ is just the exact opposite of stud.
Right. It's where you're trying to make the worst hand possible?
The worst possible hand.
And do straights and flushes count?
That's a great question. Yes. Like ace 2, 3, 4, 5 is the nut RAZZ, right?
I think so. Boy, we probably should have looked that up.
Yeah, well, this shows that we're winning, and I like it. Because then it shows that everything else I've said so far that's accurate was just off the top of my head, and now we came into a little...
Yes, the best possible RAZZ hand is 5, 4, 3, 2, ace, or a 5 high, also known as the wheel or the bicycle. There is a variation of RAZZ called Duece to 7 RAZZ, which is where the... straights and flushes do count, and
the ace is high.
Deuce to 7 would be your best hand, which would be what? 7,
6, 5, 4, 7, 5, 4, 3 deuce.
Yeah, 7, 5, 4, 3 deuce. Yes. Again, even trying to just talk about the different variations of this, it gets a little confusing, right?
Yeah, we got to go one like game variant at a time. So. RAZZ, which is the R, is everybody gets 2 cards down, 1 card up, just like 7-card stud, but opposite. There's an ante instead of a blind structure.
Right.
The 1 seed always gets the first card. There's no button. There's no blinds. And then, you roll around 2 cards down, 1 card up. And then in RAZZ, the high card, which is the worst card, is the person who is forced to bring in. They're basically like the unlucky person that is now the blind.
Forced, yeah.
And then action kind of, the bring in. Then everybody kind of goes to the left around the table that can either call to bring in, they can complete, or they can call or complete. And then once it's completed, they can raise. Basically you're just, right?
And you can fold if you're not the bring in. The bring in has to bring in, and then it goes to the next player to his left, and then they can either choose to, just like regular poker, fold, call, or raise, which would be to complete the bet.
Right. So, I mean, if you have king, queen in the hole and a jack up top, I mean, you have an absolutely great stud hand and an absolutely terrible RAZZ hand. You're just going to fold.
So it is always fun because they always have those markers up, and it'll say what game is playing, because so many players, I mean, you're getting 7-card studs, or 7 cards, it's the same format, it's the same idea, it's just, are you playing RAZZ, are you playing 7-card stud, are you playing stud 8 or better,
Yeah, you take a peek at your cards and you see 2 aces in the hole, and then you look and you're like, oh man, I'm playing
RAZZ,
which might not be that good.
Not as fun.
No. So, and then, round of betting after 3rd Street, or round of betting, then you have 4th Street, then a round of betting, and now you have 5th Street, which is just 1 card up around the table. And then, you just keep going around and around and around. It turns into the big bet on 5th Street. So now if we're playing 5-10, it's $10 increments, 10, raise to 20, raise to 30, cap at 40, that kind of thing. And then 6th Street, round of betting. And then the last card is down. Everybody gets a 3rd card face down and dirty, they like to say. And then, you have your last round of betting, and then you have your best hand, which is hopefully a low hand. Low hands always start with the highest card. So an ace 2, 3, 4, 10 would lose to like a 9.
Right.
So even though 4 out of the 5 cards are super low, the 5th card's a 10. That's the one you start from. He has the nut 10 right there. 10, 4, 3, 2, ace. But like a 9, 8, 7, 6 deuce, whatever, a 9 high beats the 10 high, even though basically all the cards are higher.
Correct.
Because it goes by the highest card.
Right. Your worst card in RAZZ. Like I said, mixed games can be difficult. This is why mixed games are fun to play, is because not everybody's 100% sure exactly what's going on. I mean, I don't know how many times a guy's just pounding bet the whole way through, and then he's like, oh, I have king high. You're like, damn it. Because now in RAZZ, you don't have to have a qualifying hand because just everything's bad, right?
Right.
So you could have a king high and theoretically win the pot.
Right, because somebody pairs up on,
right.
Somebody 2 pairs up or whatever, and they don't have 5 cards that aren't pairs. Right.
Yeah, you have to have at least 5 cards that are not pairing in order to even have a high card hand, which is the best hand you can make in RAZZ. Good Lord. Yep. And then you get 7-card stud. There is one small change to 7-card stud, and that is if a pair is showing on 4th Street, then the levels can go up. You have the option to make the big bet on 4th Street rather than having to be forced to wait until 5th Street.
And I think, to make this clear, anybody at the table has that option.
Correct.
So this is one that confuses me. But we're playing $5, $10, and Kenny has whatever in the hole, and he gets 6, and then another 6
on the board.
Kenny has
showing cards.
You're showing 6 as your 2-up cards. Anybody he's probably going to have the lead because he's the high hand, so
Correct.
It starts with him. And then he has the option to bet the full $10 if he wants to, but he can just opt to bet $5. And me, who secretly has 2 aces in the hole and an ace on top with 3 aces, I can just go ahead and make it 15.
Yeah, you can make it the big bet.
Right. That's where it gets a little tiny bit funky in the rules. It's stud high only, not stud high low, which is the E, which we're going next. So in stud high only, you can fast forward to the big bet on 4th Street if you choose to, if somebody's showing a pair.
But anybody at the table has the option who's still in the hand. If there's a pair showing on the board, and we use the board as in the sense of your cards in front of you. If anybody has a pair on your up cards, they can choose to up the levels.
Correct.
You don't have to. It's just an option that you have. And then stud 8 or better, that is where you have to have, that's a split pot game, and you have to have 5 cards under 8 in order to qualify for the low hand.
So I read this today. I did my 5 minutes of research before this. So think about stud 8 or better. It's just literally half stud, half RAZZ put together.
Right.
It's the R and the S put together to make the E.
But you do have to have a qualifying hand. You have to have a qualifying low of 8 or better in order to qualify for the low hand. Because if you have a 9 low, that doesn't count.
Correct.
Which some people get confused by. And it always happens early in the tournament when people are like, oh, I thought I had a low hand, but it turns out they really don't.
So really quickly, in stud and 8 or better, now the low card is the one that has to bring in. They're the one who is forced to be the blind because it's, in theory, like the worst hand. So like in RAZZ, a king is the worst card because you're looking for low cards.
Right.
Well, in stud 8, the deuce is the worst card because you're looking for high cards. But if you have a deuce in stud 8 or better, or the E, it's really not so bad to draw to bring in because you have a low card for your low.
Right.
Which is why people say that the aces should be removed from stud high low because the ace is just such a powerful card. It's the highest high card and the lowest low card at the same time.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I mean, if you have a bigger game, it's just, it is what it is. That's just the game.
Aces, aces are extremely powerful.
Because you can get them on both sides.
You can get them on both ends.
All right, well, let's move into the 8-game mixed. If you do an 8-game mix, that would be horse plus 3 additional games. What are the 3 additional games that are typically played?
Well, it's no limit hold'em.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have pot limit Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 8th game is deuce to 7 triple draw.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that it just kind of depends on the players. That's the one time where the players kind of get to decide. Now, obviously, if it's a tournament, they're going to let you know exactly what games you can play and which ones you can't play. But in an 8-game mixed game, it's whoever the dealer is denoted, at the table, they get to decide what game they're going to play for the next round. And that button, that I'm air quoting, that dealer button, when you get to choose, moves to the left every round, right? So if we're playing, and what are dealer choice games typically are played 7-handed?
I think 6.
6-handed.
Because a lot of these games are 6-handed.
Right.
So in the official PokerStars 8-game mix, it's horse plus No Limit Holdem, Pile Limit Omaha, and Limit Deuce to 7 triple draw, which there is no limit. There is not such a game as no limit Deuce to 7 triple draw. There's no limit Deuce to 7 single draw. And we'll get into those two games here in a second.
Well, let's do it now because everybody knows what no limit Holdem is, and we're all pretty aware of what pot limit Omaha is. So when you start doing Deuce to 7 triple draw, that is where you're going to be getting dealt 5 cards down. Yes?
Deuce to 7 triple draw is 5 cards down. Yep. So 5 cards down, this is back to the blinds. It's a blind structured game. And your goal is to get 5 cards lowest. It's like RAZZ, but straights count and aces are high.
So the best hand you can have is 7, 5, 4, 3 deuce. No straight.
Right.
7 low is the lowest you can get without making a straight, correct?
Correct. So this is a 5-card draw variant game. This isn't a community card game like Hold'em or
an up card game like 7-card stud.
It's not an up card game like 7-card stud. It's the third variant where 5-card draw. I mean, this is another grandpa game. You deal out 5 cards, you make a draw, you draw 3, you get it, whoever has the best hand wins. I mean, that's just the simplest form of poker.
Now, can you only draw 3 cards in Deuce to 7, or is there a chance where you can draw more?
You can draw a full 5 card.
You could rip a whole new hand if you wanted to.
Yep.
Probably shouldn't be playing the hand, though, if you need to redraw 5 cards.
Just fold. So now you get 5 cards, round of betting. You say you got the 7, whatever. You got king, queen, 2, 3, 4, right? That's your 5 cards. Obviously, you're going to ditch the king and the queen and draw 2 more cards. Well, maybe you pick up a 5 and a 6. Well, now you have a straight, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is a bunch of low cards, but the straight doesn't count.
Right.
So now there's a round of betting. You still like your hand. You're going to throw the 6 in and draw 1, and then boom, you bang the 7. Now you got the wheel. Now you can stand pat on the third round of betting and bombs away, raise, cap it out as much as you want because you got the nuts.
Right.
That's the easy way if you get the nuts. But sometimes you'll start with a really good hand, 2, 3, 4, 5, king, and you'll draw 5 for a pair of 5s, 9 for like a good.
And when you
9,
say draw a 5, you mean you're going to throw away the king and then you're going to stay pat on 4 cards and try to just draw 1 to get less. And you might even get like a 9 on the next card. So now you got 9, 5, 4, 3, 2 for a 9 high, which is really the third nuts. Yeah. It's hard.
No,
it gets weird there because you have a 9 high.
A bunch of 8s beat you.
But a lot of times people will pat. They'll pat on the second round of betting because they don't want any more cards. So it's like you bet it out, you draw 1, you get a 9. Now you got a 9 high on the second draw, and a lot of times people will just pat it all the way down, especially if the other player is drawing 2 cards, right?
So this is where kind of the skill and the hand reading and like this is where kind of a lot of poker comes in. You can't really throw away your 9 if you only improve with an 8 or a 7, right?
Right.
Because a 6 makes you a straight, a 5 or lower makes you a pair,
right.
An ace is high.
Right. And ace is high only in Deuce to 7.
So if you really can only improve with an 8 or a 7, you kind of got to read your table, read your situation, feel like if your hand's good or not, and then know, like if there's 3 other guys and they're all drawing 2 cards, well, your 9's probably in good shape. I mean, you get outdrawn, but you're in much better shape than one guy who's drawing 1 card and now he's re-raising and staying pat. Well, now you might want to dump that 9. Good.
Right.
Which
is funny because
10s are where it gets a little dicey. You don't like that. But 9 is like a great hand, but it's beat by every 8.
Right. It's difficult because then it's like how many times you get outdrawn on the river. And we say the river, the third time that they draw, it's still called the river at that point. Right? Yes. I mean, that's just a universal term. It's the last card that's dealt.
Correct.
Or the last round of cards that you get. And it gets tough because it's like so many times you pat the last 2 times with your 9 high and the guy draws 1, and then he beats you on the river, and there's just nothing you can do about that.
Yep.
And there
Same thing as getting outdrawn in any other game.
Yeah, and there is some kind of bluffing involved because I've done it before where like I'll have like a jack low and I get dealt jack low. It's like jack, 8, 7, 6, 4, whatever the case is, and I have jack low, but I get dealt that, and it's like, man, I'm just going to pound it the whole way, and people end up folding on the river with a 9 high low because of the fact that you've been ripping it the whole time. They don't think their 9 is good, and it's a way to kind of get a bluff through in Deuce to 7 when you haven't drawn any cards the entire time. You stand pat the whole time. It scares everybody, right? I mean, it's a way to get a lot of the players out and see what happens. Now you can
Prahlad Freeman, I think Prahlad Freeman. I don't know how to say his name. He's a pro. At the final table of the Deuce to 7 triple draw WSOP event last year, I think it's called like snowing or something to do with snow. I don't know what that means, but snow means something along the lines of like a guy staying pat and pounding it. And a lot of times they do it with like, if you get 3 7s in your hand, that's an absolutely terrible hand, but you have all the 7 blockers, right? Like,
right.
How likely is it that somebody's going to have a 7 low? It's never, so you can just rep that you have it. And anyways, he read the situation perfectly, and he's like, it doesn't really snow too much in Vegas, does it? And he's like, it does every once in a while though. And he called the guy with like king high or like a jack high or like a pretty bad hand,
right? Even
though the guy patted it and pounded it the whole way down, but the guy got caught. So maybe we'll link that. I can find that, and we can link that into our
on Twitter.
On our Twitter or something.
Yeah, we can show it out, which is kind of neat. So Deuce to 7 triple draw is a extremely fun game to make or to play, I should say. Now, when you start
the worst bad beat of all time at 2019 WSOP was a Deuce to 7 triple draw hand. I don't know who was playing it or whatever. It was 4th place, like $200K for 4th and $330K for 3rd. The guy just took he was like 99.92%, and the guy outdrew him. He had like the second nuts off the bat, and the guy like just manufactured, had like 2-3, then drew a 4, then drew a 5, then drew a 7. He's like, I got the nuts. And it was just like, it was Josh Aryeh versus somebody. We'll link that too. 2 awesome Deuce to 7 triple draw hands. I think both from the same event.
Wow.
And it shows you how cool the game is.
Now, when you start, and now that would be a 10-game mix, or that's 8-game mix. Now, when you start adding into the 10-game mix, what are the extra 2 games that you're throwing in? So you're including all of the games we've already talked about, plus 2 new ones, which is typically Badugi and maybe a Badugi variant.
Badugi or Badacey.
Yeah, that's where I get lost because I know Badugi. Let's do Badugi first.
Right, Badugi's easy. Actually, they're all easy. They just sound crazy because I didn't really know what they were. I had always heard the mixed game people at the shoe that played 50-100 at the table behind me talk about it, but I was just like, Badacey, I have no idea. But
let's start with Badugi.
It's really simple.
Start with Badugi. Badugi is where you get dealt 4 cards.
4 cards.
And the goal is to get 1 card of each suit, no pairs.
Yep. And yeah, the lowest, so it's a low card game.
Mm-hmm.
It's more on the ace to 5, like RAZZ, and straights don't count. So ace 2, 3, 4, all different suits
is the nuts.
Is the nuts.
And it doesn't matter if you have the 4 of spades or the 4 of hearts. It's just, I have a Badugi. Badugi means you have 1 of each card in your 4-card hand. And then it's whoever has the lowest 4 cards with 4, right? Because sometimes you even play Badugi and it's like, well, I have a 3-card Badugi. I have, ace 2, 3 of, 1 of each suit. And then I have a paired suit, meaning I have 2 hearts in my hand, so that I have a 3-card Badugi, and that's what I have. Does the 4th card play at that point? Meaning if we each have a 3-card ace, deuce, 3 Badugi, 3-card Badugi, and then we each have a king, that would be a chop?
I don't know if I understand the question. Let me maybe say this. The worst 4-card, the worst Badugi beats the best 3-card.
Okay.
So if I have king, queen, jack, 10, all different suits, I have a king high Badugi. That beats an ace 2, 3, 4 if you have 2 clubs in your hand or 2 of any suit.
Right. I only have a 3-card Badugi then because I only have 3 of the suits. So I, by default, only have 3 cards of the suit. And you have all 4 suits, you auto win. Doesn't matter, even though it's a king high Badugi. You have a Badugi, which is the 4 cards, 4 suits. Yep. You're good to go.
Yep.
That's a crazy one. I like Badugi. It's a really fun game to play. I feel like Badugi, typically when we play in the mixed games at CCG, that seems to be the game that people have the most trouble with.
Yeah,
personally.
It's just tough. Now, do you get, question is, do you get 3 draws or 1 draw in Badugi?
That's a good question. I will look that up. Why don't you try to explain to us what the variants of Badugi are.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, it says triple draw. So, I mean, it's a triple draw game. Triple card game. Triple draw.
So that's
game.
like another tough one where it's like, man, I have one of each suit, but I have like a jack high. Like I have a jack high Badugi where I have one of each suit, but the one card's a jack. That's a great hand, but it's a good hand. It's not a great hand. But like if I'm going to throw away my jack of hearts, the only cards that improve me now are like the 10 of hearts, the 9 of hearts, the 8 of hearts.
Hearts that don't pair your... Because if you have a pair of aces, ace of clubs, ace of diamonds, 2 of clubs, 2 of hearts, whatever the 4 suits are. If you have 2 aces, even though you have 4 suits, you have a pair that's not... That doesn't count?
Right, yeah.
You can only count one of your aces at that point.
Yep.
So you have a 3-card Badugi with an ace low.
So, Baduecey is half Badugi, half deuce to 7 low ball. So we just talked about deuce to 7 with the bad beats in the snow, and you get 3 cards and you can't make straights, and 7, 5, 4, 3 deuces, the nuts. That's triple draw. That's low ball. And then it's also half Badugi. So you get 5 cards and you play triple draw the exact same way you'd play, or deuce to 7 low ball. You'd play the exact same way, except for now suits matter for half the pot too.
Right, you can win half the pot with just a Badugi hand.
So not only are you trying to get 7, 5, 4, 3 deuce, you are trying to get 7 and then 5, 4, 3 deuce, all be one of each different suit.
Right.
To have nut. And so the one weird thing about this game, Baduecey, is that the ace is low in Badugi, but it's high in triple draw.
Right.
So it goes to the ace is now high. So it's a Badugi game where 2, 3, 4, 5, all different suits is your nut Badugi hand. So it does change
not ace,
Badugi
2, 3, 4.
a little bit.
Right.
So that's the one kind of confusing thing, because it's putting 2 games together, except for the ace variant is the ace is the best card in Badugi and the worst card in lowball. So it's kind of funky that they had to make the ace.
And that's called Badacey, or that's called
Baduecey. Duece, because you get the deuce to 7 lowball with the Badacey.
I gotcha.
Then you have Badacey, which is the exact same thing, except for it's half Badugi, half ace, half RAZZ.
Right. With 5 cards.
So now the ace is the low. So now you're looking for ace 2, 3, 4, 6. Ace 2, 3, 4, 5, sorry. With ace 2, 3, 4 being one of each different suit. So it really just throws your whole entire strategy for low ball kind of out the window, because not only are you looking for, low cards to fit your profile of all my cards being as low as possible, but now all my cards need to be as low as possible and the correct suits.
Yeah, my brain is officially shut down once we start going into the Baduecey, or I can't even say them all. Once you start getting into the Badugi variants, that's where I get lost. Yep.
So it really, I don't know any strategy. Like I was reading some light strategy and it was just like, pound your single way pots. And like there's times where you just need to turn your hand into a one hand. Like, if you have a really good, like if you have 7, 5, 4, 3, 2 in Baduecey, which is half low ball, half Badugi, if you have the nut low ball hand, don't try and screw with it and get a good Badugi hand too. Just pound it and know you're probably only going to get half the pot.
Hope there's 3 players in the hand and you're going to quarter one of them, and that's how you can be profitable in that hand.
Right. Like if you have the 2 of clubs, the 3 of clubs, the 4 of clubs, the 5 of clubs, and the 7 of hearts, just don't mess with it. Like, yes, you're only going to win half the pot, but like try and just pound away and get as much money in there as possible from multiple people. And then you'll be, it's pretty hard, I think, to scoop in those hands. I think by the second or for sure by the last draw, you've now narrowed it down to like, okay, this is going to be a Badugi hand, or okay, this is going to be a low ball hand, or okay, maybe I have some nut cards here that make my Badugi and deuce to 7 low ball hand.
So kind of unlike when you're playing Omaha 8 or better, where you can really try to get you got nuts on both sides, where you've got, you know, aces full and a low, ace deuce low, or you know what I mean, or you got ace deuce with a flush, and the flush you can get nut. You can scoop the pot much easier because the fact that the game doesn't have so many variants. You know, you can draw to both ends, and those are the best cards that you should be raising on every single street. Whereas in Baduecey and Badacey, when there's a little bit, you're not really trying to scoop, you're trying to win one side or the other. It's difficult because if you make a change in your Badugi hand to try to win the deuce to 7 triple draw hand, it's very difficult to be able to do both, right?
Right. There's
you're
only
at
very specific, the right suit,
one or two
right
outs
card.
at best.
You're not. It's like, oh, I don't need a 2. It's like I don't need a 2, 3, or 4. I need a 2, 3, or 4 of hearts.
Right.
You know,
you're down to really narrowing it down. So you're better off. The one strategy point that we'll make here is that you're better off in those Baduecey and Badacey hands is that you really just kind of pick one road or the other. I'm really trying to win the Badugi hand, or I'm really trying to win the deuce of 7 triple draw hand, and that's really the only avenues you're going at. Whereas in Omaha, you can kind of have way more draws to win both sides.
Correct. In Omaha, you really shouldn't be going for half the pot.
Correct. So that's the one difference in mixed games is right. In Omaha, you should really be trying to win both the high and the low, or at least you should have outs to win both. Maybe you turn the nut low and you still have a redraw. I mean, it's Omaha. It's all about redraws to make a flush and then scoop the pot. All right, that's enough on Badugi, Badacey, and Badugi, Badacey, and Baduecey.
Badacey. And Badacey's the same thing. It's just now the ace is low and you're looking for ace 2, 3, 4, 5 instead of 7, 5, 4.
Now the ace can be high and low. It can be both, or
the ace is low.
Low, I gotcha.
We're back to it being the ace is the nut card,
right?
In RAZZ and Badugi,
it's an extremely powerful hand.
Right. All right. So now, how much time we got? We got enough time for my new favorite mixed game of all time that I've never played. But
I want to get into some of the Omaha variants because I feel like a lot of people are trying to move into Omaha variants, and they're really fun. So let's do some of those.
This one qualifies?
Yeah, well, let's start easy. Let's start with Big O. When you play Big O, what are they referring to?
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
So Big O is just Big O. Why don't we just start with 5-card Omaha? Actually,
okay,
that's even easier.
There you go.
So 5-card Omaha is just PLO, the same 4 cards, except for you're getting an extra card.
You get
making
5 cards.
It way more crazy, and it's the exact same game as PLO, except for you get an extra card. You have to use 2 in your hand,
right,
and 3 on the board. But now you're going to have
you get an extra card, right? You're getting an extra card that you see. So you're getting a 5-card Omaha hand. You still have to use 2 in your hand, 3 on the board. But obviously, there's so much more is out there. Basically, whatever the nuts are, somebody probably has it. So if you're drawn to the second or third nuts, you should not be in that hand.
It also makes blockers extremely powerful because I used to play in a club that offered 5-card PLO. $5, $10. It was just $5, $10 with a $3 ante. It was just an absolute crazy game, and it didn't take me very long before I left that club because you can only lose a few disgusting $10,000 pots before it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore.
I don't know how to play this game.
So if you really don't know how to play, I don't really think anybody knows how to play. I looked up the odds. If you have like 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, that's ahead of like a decent chunk of aces.
Wow.
Like it takes good aces to be ahead of 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
So that's
Jack 10, 9, 8, 7.
That's 5-card Omaha. And then now if you do 5-card Omaha high-low, it's called Big O.
Correct.
Now you're playing 5-card Omaha, except it's a split pot game. You got a high and a low hand.
And you really need to go for both hands because having the nut low isn't going to be good enough because somebody's also going to have it, and then you're going to get quartered. And also having the nut straight by itself really isn't good enough because somebody else is going to have the nut straight and be drawing to a low, have a shot at a low. I mean, if the board is 7, 8, 9, and you got Queen Jack 10, you're like, boom, I got the nuts, I got a redraw. What can I do? It's like what better spot am I looking for?
Right.
Well, the guy next to you has Jack 10 with Ace 3 drawing for that low. And now you're going to get half the pot or you're going to get quarter of the pot.
Right.
So those are hands where you really use those games. If I can give you one little piece of advice, is just play so much tighter than you ever think you have to play. All these crazy hands that look good with like the double suited queen 10, 9, 8, 4s, and the stuff. It's like, ooh, this kind of looks like it goes together.
Looks tasty, yeah.
You really need like a nut suit and an ace deuce 3 to like be comfortable like playing big pots. And I mean, sometimes you're going to have ace, king, queen, and you have a high only hand where it's like, all right, screw this. I want to hit the high, and just, a lot of times there isn't a low.
Well, I think that's a good point, because if the flop comes out all cards above 8, then there's no low. So now you're just playing 5-card Omaha if you're playing Big O, right? I mean, if the flop is ace, king, queen, and you have Jack 10, you don't need to worry about a low hand, because no matter what 2 cards come out on the turn of the river, there's no low qualifying hand.
Correct. So but on the other note, if you have, let's just say you have ace, king, queen, which is, it sounds incredible hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a high low, and the flop comes king, deuce 3. Well, you got the nuts. King, deuce 3 rainbow. You have the top set. You got the stone cold nuts. Sure, you're going to want to play that hand, but you're not going to want to get that hand all in, because someone as easy as 4, 5, 6.
Right.
Now, let's say even the guy bets, or you bet, and the guy calls, the turn comes in 8. So now it's king, 8, deuce 3. You still have the nuts, and it's on the turn. But again, you don't want to get your hand all in.
Right,
because anytime you're going to get your hand all in, the guy already has half the pot, 100% locked up.
And he's drawing to a bigger high hand than what you have.
And even if he has a gutter ball, even if he has 2, 3, even if he has 5, 6, just naked 5, 6 in his hand, nothing else. He only has 2 cards, the 5 and the 6. You can only win half the pot, and you can lose all of it.
Right.
With top set and the nuts on the turn.
Is there ever an instance when you would fold top set there, the nut high hand, right? Because you're using the king, 8, 2, 3, right? And you've got pocket kings and no low possibilities. You got all big cards, no flush possibilities. So you're not going to improve there. You're really just playing your kings. You cannot improve. Is there any time when, if it's like a 4-way pot, that you would fold that hand? Or you're always going to see it? At that point, maybe there's 4.
Especially, yeah. It would have to be kind of heads up,
right?
Really,
that you would
if there's 4 people
contemplate folding
half the pot, you're going to double up.
Right. That's a good point. That was well, I mean, hey, that's what we're doing. We're trying to figure out where we're at.
Right. And really, yeah, a 7 or higher makes no straights, and you win the pot.
Right.
You win half the pot.
All right. So we got 5-card Omaha. We got Big O, which is 5-card Omaha high-low. What other Omaha variants are there floating around right now?
So there's 4-card, 5-card, 6-card, single board, triple board Omaha.
Jesus.
And they played that in London when I went to visit your sister when she lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat down and I played. It's dealer's choice, 6-handed. You have the dealer option to play 4 cards, 5 cards, or 6 cards in your whole card in your hand, and then 1 board or 3 boards. So now I was like, dude, I just want to play Omaha. Like, right. I hate Holdem, and I'll play Holdem if it's the only thing there, but I want to play Omaha. So every time it was me, I would just be like, 4 cards, 1 board. And they'd be like, come on, dude. Like, stupid fat American, what are you doing? Like, we want to play. So they've been choosing 5 or 6 cards and 3 boards. That gets absolutely insane. Each board's worth a third of the pot. But if you win 2 boards, you scoop the whole pot. And you get up to 6 cards in your hand. It's one of the craziest fun. Nobody really has any idea. It's the closest thing to playing roulette with card room as you can ever.
Right.
Like, Omaha's already gambling. Omaha with 5 cards is already extremely gambling. Omaha with 6 cards is like on crack. And then you had 3 boards, and now you need to win 1 board or else you're getting scooped. But if somebody else wins 2 boards, they win the whole pot. So you're just trying to win 2 boards. And so that's a little craziness. I've only seen that in Europe and stuff. But the last game, which I guess it's really an Omaha variant, it's really a 5-card draw variant and Omaha variant. And I know that it's extremely popular these days in the mixed game. If they're like a group of 6 guys, are like, all right, let's pick 14 games. they're going to pick Dramaha in it.
Now explain Dramaha to us. It sounds like a lot of drama.
It is. It's half 5-card draw, half 5-card PLO. So simple in it. Mm-hmm. Half the pot's going to go to whoever has the best whole cards, because they have 5 cards in their hand, and you get to draw once. We'll go over when you draw, but it's just like the old card game with your grandpa. You get dealt 5 cards. You got a pair of jacks and 3 garbage cards. You throw away your 3 jack, or you throw away your 3 garbage cards. You try and make 2 pair. Whoever has the best hand after that, you win. Well, that gets half the pot in this game, and then the other half the pot is given to whoever makes the best 5-card PLO hand.
That is absolutely crazy.
Yep. So it basically goes, everybody gets 5 cards. You see a flop. Everybody sees a flop. Well, the weird part about this game is you see the flop. So now you might have like, I'm just making up examples here, but like Jack, 4, 5, 6, right? That's your 5-card hand. And, based on 5-card draw, you would just ditch the 4, 5, 6.
Keep the jacks,
and keep the jacks. But let's say the flop comes ace, deuce, 3. And now you just flopped a wheel.
Right.
You're obviously keeping your 4, 5, 6, and you're dumping your jacks and kind of giving up on the 5-card draw hand. Hopefully you draw like 5, 5 and draw trip 5 or something like that. So that makes it kind of a weird aspect of which cards do you want to keep, not only to make the best 5-card hand, but to also have it coordinate with the board.
Again, mixed games are a lot of fun, especially when you get into the really crazy mixed games, which are variants of variants, which really you're falling down a rabbit hole of just crazy fun games. But
and they're fun because nobody knows how to optimally play them. The bottom line here is there's no solver that says, oh, if I have Jack, 4, 5, 6, and the flop is ace, deuce, 3, what is the optimal play?
Right.
Because, let's put it one really quick. Let's say you have Jack, 5, 4. You get trip jacks in your hand, which might probably win you the 5-card draw hand.
Right.
But if the flop comes ace, deuce, 3, well, now you have the nuts on the board. So it's like, do I keep my trip jacks and hopefully win that? Do I keep my 4, 5, which I can get outdrawn on fairly easy if there's a flush draw?
Do I stand pat and not draw anything? Right?
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Well, you can. It's one of those mixed games where you really kind of have to pick an avenue. Do I want to play the 5-card draw hand with maybe a possibility of winning the Omaha hand, or do I want to play the Omaha hand and kind of give up on the 5-card draw side? And
you can always draw. You can always get lucky and draw 3 cards or draw 2 cards and keep your Omaha hand, and then bing something on your draw 2. Draw trips.
Right.
Or draw a pair of aces.
I think that's really going to do it for mixed games. This might have to be a 2-part series because there is so many games that you can play and so many different things that are happening in mixed games, and they really are fun. It's just I really enjoy mixed games because you're just mixing up the play. It's not the same monotonous game. Even PLO, when you play like a PLO tournament, and a lot of these mixed games, like in the CSOP, we did a mixed game, like a 12-game, dealer's choice tournament, which was super fun. And I think we got like 1 table for it. So, it wasn't a huge hit, but it was a good time. It was a high buy-in. It was like $200 buy-in or something. But it's fun. It's just something different to do, and it gives you a chance to kind of exercise your poker brain to try to figure these games out as you go, which is really fun.
Yeah, the learning curve it's if you know poker, like the learning curve, I know we're just spitting out boards and hands and strategies and stuff like that, and you might just be overwhelmed by hearing numbers and right. But it really, when you sit down and you play the game, you get a good flow of it in an hour. It's intimidating, sure, because you're sitting down at the table, you're like, I don't really know what's going on. But if you just observe and watch what's getting shown down and watch when guys who act like, like Dallas, like if you can watch Dallas and see him in RAZZ be showing like a deuce 8 and then fold. And you're like, man, well, if I was getting a deuce 8, like I would maybe think about playing that hand depending on what's in my hole cards. And you can really kind of get a good grasp of like at least somewhat of what's going on, enough to like compete.
Right.
Which is fun.
Yeah, it's good.
It's not like Omaha where you have no idea what's going on. You think you can use all 4 cards. You pot, you're all in. Well, now you just lost 1,000. I don't want to do that again. I'm out. It's Limit. It's a little bit slower. You know, people, there's a lot more like everybody in all these stud games has their own set of cards. So you can kind of like see like, oh, well, this guy's folding this here, and this is exactly what he had. Like you get to see his cards. And
right.
So it's fun.
It really can improve your no limit play by playing different games, because you get those better reads on people, and you get to see the cards a little bit more, and you get the understanding of what the players are doing and how tight and how aggressive they are being. If you, like you said, Dallas ends up folding an 8 high in RAZZ, it's like, man, I wonder what his other 2 cards were. I mean, he's playing super tight. So when he is aggressive the next time playing, you got to use that to your advantage and be like, man, I better have a legit hand here, or drawing to a very good hand, because if I'm not, he's just going to mollywop you.
Yep. Well, so I wish mixed games were more readily available. I mean, there's one casino in Vegas that runs all the mixed games. It's off the strip. I don't know what it's called. It's
good travel tip there, Brandon.
Yeah, it's the one that I don't know. I'll
look it up.
I'll look it up. But besides that, you got to go to the internet to find these mixed game variants, and really the internet isn't for us Americans yet, so we're kind of out of luck until either. I mean, you can play online,
and a lot of the online sites have all of these goofy games. I like to call them goofy games sometimes, because it's just games that people are not usually playing all the time.
Yep.
Well, great. That's gonna do it for Mixed Games Part 1. At least we might have a Part 2 here shortly, and try to give you guys some more confined look at some of these different games. But that's the very general overview of mixed games, and kind of the basics and what they are. And when you hear games, people want to say like, "Oh, Baduecey and Badacey," now you have a little bit better idea of what the hell they're talking about.
At least you know what they're playing, even if you don't know how to play it. It's like, oh. It's half Badugi, so we're looking for all different suits.
Right.
And it's half deuce to 7 low ball, so we're looking for low cards
that don't straighten flush.
7, that don't make a straight.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty cool. Well, I definitely want to give a shout out to Dallas, because Dallas is definitely our biggest proponent of mixed games at CCG. So we definitely want to say hey to Dallas. Hey, Dallas, we miss you. We want to get on some wild. What's the wild slot machine game? Wildlife. Yeah, I love playing Wildlife with Dallas. He's as big a degen on those slot machines as you and I are, which is fun. It's good to have some competition for those. So thank you for Dallas for listening. I'm sure he will check this one out. Thank you for everyone for listening. If you check us out on any of the places that you listen to podcasts, please try to leave us a 5-star review, and maybe leave us an actual written review. All of those are great. We really appreciate it. It helps out the podcast as much as possible. We're hoping to start season 2 here of the overlay once we get back into CCG, which will be hopefully around July 1st area.
Yep.
That's the plan.
Maybe a week before, maybe a week after, maybe
somewhere in there. We should be back to live poker in the Midwest, which will be fantastic. We're dying to get back in there. So thank you as always, Brandon, for being my co-host, and thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time for the next episode of The Overlay, a poker podcast. You're supposed to say goodbye.
Oh, farewell.
Farewell. See you, everybody. Thanks.